ends of that sentence hung like fruit on a tree. She puzzled over which to choose.
Is very serious. We don't know what my brother did.
Technically, this was true. The small search party that left the theater parking lot shortly after midnight, when the sleuthing stage manager found Benji's helmet at the brink of the woods, had stumbled upon him in a state of drifting consciousness. He knew his name, recognized the few stalwart and morbidly curious castmates whom the director had rallied to scour the grounds, could correctly, although owing to his severely bitten tongue almost incomprehensibly, name the day of the week and the current president, but shed no light on how he ended up 30 feet below the peculiarly broken bridge. Not that anyone asked. The paramedics who towed Benji up the steep, wooded slope on a bright orange backboard, the woman named Kat who called Claudia with the news, this psychiatric social worker who'd picked up his file for the first time an hour ago, all of these people had already solved the mystery of her brother's fall by insisting that it wasn't one. Even the police, who were days away from collecting an official statement, seemed to be sniffing around for form's sake. Only Claudia resisted the race from premise to conclusion. Only she chose to believe that her fucked-up brother wasn't quite that fucked up.
Has he mentioned suicide?
Valerie pressed, crossing her thick ankles and leaning into the question.
He's been living in a tool shed. It would be odd if he didn't mention suicide.
Claudia went on to explain, and Valerie went on to write down why Benji's occasional threats to throw himself in front of the L train or jump from the Williamsburg Bridge were not the serious cries for help one might mistake them for. They weren't flares shot into troubled psychological skies. They weren't even jokes. In asking the fastest route to the Veranzo Narrows or hiking his leg teasingly over the rail of Claudia's fire escape, what was he doing but opening a release valve, letting go the disappointments of a botched audition or a date that ended disappointingly with a forced hug on the doorstep or a collection letter from an angry creditor? Yes, her brother mentioned suicide, but he was an actor. He could be melodramatic, hyperbolic, hypochondriacal, histrionic, selfish, and self-centered, sometimes all at once. But he told Claudia everything, and Claudia, who took heart in knowing the dark of Benji's darkest corners, could say with certainty that his selfishness did not extend to doing himself in. She meant to make a simple point, but the more she talked, the more trouble she had making it. She mentioned one bridge or another no less than 5 times, which even a lukewarm Freudian would have found significant. It was only a matter of time, she seemed to be saying, before the man dove off of something. And maybe he had. Claudia had been resisting the thought of it since the phone rang at 5:30 that morning, summoning her. She'd thrown a wall up against the idea, a wall as big and fortified as any that stood in the world and bore her name. Yet here she was, trying to convince herself that Benji had not, could not, would not.
Is your brother being treated for depression?
Not anymore.
But was he?
He was.
His blood alcohol content was 0.20 when he came in.
Drunk isn't suicidal.
Would you say he has a drinking problem?
Last night he did.
Would you say last night was unique?
Falling into a gorge in a suit of armor? Yes, that's unique.
It sounds like he may have been...
Claudia did all she could to keep her hands from reeling in the hampered word.
Self-medicating.
Valerie eventually offered. Claudia frowned. A sculptor of conventional beauties would never have paired a nose that slender with a surprisingly wide mouth, but the components of her face together gave stunning proof that the whole was more than the sum of its parts. Her dark eyes were particularly expressive and could no more hide her annoyance with Valerie's prying questions than her fear of failing her brother by mishandling them.
I don't want to tell you how to do your job, Claudia began in a tone that registered her desire to do exactly that. But shouldn't we speak with Benji before diagnosing him?
She clung to the idea of her brother speaking for himself,